Welcome to the Ets Media Podcast, where the New York Mets and New York Jets are covered weekly every Wednesday, wherever you find your podcasts.
Welcome to the 5th episode of the Ets Media Podcast, where I will cover the Mets and Jets weekly every Wednesday. On today's 5th episode, I will cover the Jets game-by-game predictions, 53-man roster cut surprises, and Mets trying to find their way into a playoff spot and what's ahead for them. Starting first with the Jets, their 53-man roster surprises, there's only about 3 big surprises. First being Izzy staying and being RB4 on the active roster. This is definitely a surprise because he was 4th in the depth chart. He played the entire game at against the Giants, and he had a great preseason, but it looked like the odds were stacked against him, especially where he was in the depth chart with 2 rookies in front of him, and Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, and obviously Breece Hall at 1. But that's a surprise considering what they wanted to do, or what they did at cornerback, which I thought would have mixed stuff up, because I was thinking if they kept Izzy, they would have had 6 cornerbacks. But if they got rid of Izzy, they would have kept 7 cornerbacks. And it looks like they did keep 6 cornerbacks. I'll get to the cornerbacks in a second here, but it's definitely a surprise to look. I mean, this is normal. They do normally keep 4 running backs, but I did not think this year, or at least this preseason right before the season starts, that they would be keeping 4. I thought they were going to go with 3. With Izzy, not Izzy, with Izzy being cut, but with Breece, Braylon, and Isaiah being the 3 running backs. So it's definitely surprising that he made the team, and it's interesting to see what's to come for him. Now moving on to the second of the 3 surprises, the Jets are keeping 3 undrafted free agents, D linemen, and a veteran D lineman that was originally not expected to make the team before training camp. The 3 undrafted free agents, Leonard Taylor, who I talked high about, Braden McGregor, and Eric Watts. All 3 of those guys have been outstanding, especially in the preseason games. Leonard Taylor, he's had, I think either 2.5, 3.5 sacks in the past 3 preseason games. McGregor, he's coming off a 2-sack game, and then Eric Watts is coming off a half a sack game. It's definitely surprising they were going with 3 undrafted free agent rookies, especially only at the defensive line position. But these are 3 highly touted, highly talented as well players here to help out the defensive line. But also someone else who was staying that was not expected to make the team is veteran Takk McKinley. He has had an amazing training camp and an amazing preseason. Like I said a couple times before, he was not expected to make the team before, but heading into probably the Giants game, it was almost a lock he was going to make the team at the edge rushing position. And it probably came down to him or Braden McGregor, but they ended up keeping both, which is great to see. But I want to head into Takk McKinley's preseason. In the preseason, he had 7 total tackles with 2.5 sacks, with 4 solo tackles and 3 assist tackles. So he had an amazing camp, and like I said before, heading into the Giants game, he was probably expected to make the team. So it's great to see them add another edge piece. But I want to head into the final roster surprises, and that's Brandon Codrington getting traded. I find it surprising because of his versatility at special teams. He had an amazing preseason returning punts and kicks, but he was just one of those cornerbacks that they would have had to keep 7 if they wanted to keep Izzy, is what I was thinking. But they go with 6, keeping obviously Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter, Brandon Eccles, and then Jarek Bernard, Converse, and Quantez Stiggers. I thought, I obviously am mentioning this again, I thought they were going to keep him just because of his special teams ability, but he got traded to the Bills, so that's over. And now I want to head into the game-by-game predictions for the Jets this upcoming 2024 season. And kicking off Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers, I have them taking the L there. I think it's a tough game to open up against. Obviously, opening up against that amazing offense and that amazing defense. It's definitely not the ramp up that I was expecting, but the 49ers are going to come flying, maybe with Brandon Ayuk. Nobody knows what's going to happen there, but they're going to have Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy. Christian McCaffrey, I still think, is out, which is a positive. Trent Williams might not be there. It depends on his contract, but that defense is still going to be studded with Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and Leonard Floyd. But it's definitely, especially away, heading to the West Coast, it's going to be a tough game for the Jets. And starting the season, I have them taking the L, but I have them getting their first win at Tennessee week 2. Tennessee's going to be an interesting team this year. Will Levis at quarterback for his second year. They added pieces around him with Diop. He's been there. But Calvin Ridley was added. It's going to be an interesting team how they look this year in the AFC South. But I think the Jets got to get out of there easy with the W and head into their home opener on Thursday Night Football against the New England Patriots, which I have them winning, moving to 2-1 on the season. I think the Patriots starting quarterback, Drake May, will struggle heavily this game going up against the Jets defense, because the Jets defense just has a strong history in 2023 of just killing rookie quarterbacks. Last year, Aiden O'Connell struggled. Even top 10 quarterback in the league and offensive rookie of the year, CJ Stroud, struggled, having only 91 yards in 23 attempts. I think Drake May will just have one of those games and the Jets will win. I think they move to 2-1 on the year, and head back and staying home against Denver with Bo Nix again, rookie quarterback, starting for the Denver Broncos. I think they get another win there. I think right now the Broncos have probably right there with the Panthers as the weakest rosters in the NFL. But I think Bo Nix and Sean Payton can change that. But I have the Jets winning that game pretty comfortably in their second home win of the year and their second home game of the year, moving to 3-1. Then they head over to London to play Minnesota, which would have been J.J. McCarthy, a third straight rookie quarterback, but instead they play former Jet Sam Darnold, and I think they get the win there. It could be a tricky game for them because they'll probably be looking at week 6 against the Bills, but I think the Jets will still get the win there. But I don't think it will be a blowout or a far away game. But I think it'll be a very, very close game, especially over there in London, because they still have that great wide receiver core with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and maybe TJ Hawkinson if he plays. He's starting on the PUP list, so he'll be out the first 4 games. He might be back week 5, but who knows? It's still a great core. But I still think the Jets get the win there to move on to 4-1 heading into Monday Night Football against the Bills at home. I think they lose that game, losing the first game of the series against the Bills. I just think they'll be riding the high too high, and they'll trip up against the Bills. It will be another close game. Josh Allen performs poorly in MetLife. Expect another one of those performances. But I just have that feeling that the Jets are going to fall and lose that game to fall to 4-2 on the year and head into Sunday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, week 7 against the Steelers, it is going to be a defensive battle. I think both teams will score less than 20 points, and I think the Jets will just get out of that game with, I think it'll be around a 3-point difference, but I think the Jets' offense is stronger than the Pittsburgh offense, even though it's a defensive game. I think they'll get the win 17-14, something like that maybe. because that Pittsburgh defense, top 5, Jets defense, top 5. It's going to be great. TJ Watt for the Steelers, and now obviously everyone for the Jets. But now the Jets are 5-2 heading at New England to play the second and final game of that series. I think the Jets lose that and split with New England. Not a lot of people think that, but the Jets have not beaten the Patriots in New England in a very, very long time. And I think that streak continues because the Patriots, they also have a very, very good defense. Even though they lost Matt Judon, they're still a top 15 defense in the NFL. And they always give quarterbacks and offenses a run for their money. So I think it'll be another defensive game, but I think the Jets will lose that game. Now you head into Thursday Night Football on Halloween against the Texans. I think they come out of that with a win. It will be an underdog win for the Jets. But after how CJ Stroud played last year at MetLife Stadium, I think it is not going to go well for the Houston Texans. I wouldn't say at all. I think it will also be a pretty tight game. But I have the Jets winning that one in an absolute crazy offensive battle there. I don't think the Jets defense will perform well, especially against that Houston Texans wide receiver core with Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, John Mechie, just to name a few. And obviously CJ Stroud throwing the ball. But I think the Jets come out of that with the win thanks to the offense. Now they have 2 more games until the bye. They face the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. I think they get the win. Not much to say about the Cardinals. They're going to have a great duo with Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison, but that still has to have time to develop. So I think the Jets come out of that game very comfy. Now I believe the next game before they head off into the bye, right now they're 7-3, week 11, a pretty late bye. I think they lose this game right before the bye on Sunday Night Football against the Colts. I mean, the Colts offense has some very strong potential with Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, and obviously that very good offensive line with Quentin Nelson. I think after just 10 weeks, I don't think the Jets will be able to keep up with the Colts that game, and I have them losing that game, falling to 7-4 before the bye. Now, coming out of the bye, they head to Seattle, and I think they'll be hitting on all cylinders that game and get the win against former Jets quarterback again, Geno Smith. I think they'll get out of that game very comfy again, and get the win. But after that, they head back down to the South to play Miami in Week 14. I think they lose that game in the first game against Miami. They struggle in Miami. I think they're going to struggle there again. So I have them losing that game. Despite Tua not having a strong performances against the Jets last year, but I still think that offense is very high-powered, and I think they'll get the best of the Jets that game. But in Week 15, they stay down in Florida, and they face the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they get that win. Also, following up on the Jaguars, I think they'll win the AFC South this year, but I think the Jets will get that win down in the warm, sunny state of Florida. But then, after that game, they head back up to New York to play the Rams at, I believe, 1 o'clock. So an LA West Coast team coming across to play 1 o'clock game. I have the Jets winning that game, despite the Rams having Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Kyron Williams. So I think that will be another great game. I think just the West Coast to the East Coast will trip up the Rams there, and the Jets will get the win to move to 10-5 on the year as they head into the 2 last games against the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The next game, Week 17, at the Bills, the Jets struggle, especially their offense. They struggle so heavily the past 3 years, I believe, at Buffalo, especially in the cold, because they always get those late games against Buffalo. But I think they break the ice here and beat the Bills in a very close game. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's going to have one of his best games in a Jets uniform this game in Week 17 against the Bills to move to 11-5 on the year and play a crucial, very, very crucial game, Week 18, to potentially win the AFC East against the Dolphins. I had them losing against the Dolphins earlier, not here, in Week 14. I think in Week 18, final game of the year, in MetLife, I think the Jets beat the Miami Dolphins to move to 12-5 on the year and clinch the playoff spot as the 3 seed in the AFC and host a playoff game in MetLife for the first time ever. Now, obviously, I have them going 12-5, but just to look at their floor, I think the floor for them right now is 9-8. Looking at some games you could flip that would lead them to hitting their floor at 9-8. A loss to Pittsburgh, a loss to Houston, and maybe a sweep to either the Dolphins or the Bills. So I think their floor is 9-8. But looking at their ceiling, if everything goes well, which I don't think they're going to hit this ceiling, but 14-3 I think is the correct ceiling for them. Now looking at the 12-5, just 2 games that would have to flip for the win. A sweep against New England and possibly beating the Colts maybe, but I think the correct prediction would be 12-5 for the Jets. Now we're done with the Jets for this week. Now we're heading into the Mets, where we're going to talk about how September is coming, but October is coming quicker, and what the Mets need to do to fight for that 3rd wildcard spot and try to knock off the Braves. Now the Braves are red hot. They are 8-2 in their last 10, but the Mets are 6-4 in their last 10, coming off a win against the Diamondbacks, who were on a 6-game winning streak and who hold the top wildcard spot. But now the Mets don't have to worry, or they shouldn't worry about getting the second or the first wildcard spot in the National League. They have to solely focus on that 3rd wildcard spot, who the Braves currently own, and the Mets are 2.5 games back from them. And that means, as the Braves are one of the hottest teams in the National League, there is no margin for error for the Mets. Even looking at the current schedule, or the upcoming schedules for both the Braves and the Mets, the Braves have such an easy schedule ahead of them, other than a couple of teams. But the Mets, they have a little bit tougher schedule, I would say. But here's what they have coming up for the Mets. They got the win against the Diamondbacks last night. Then they played 2 more against the Diamondbacks, 3 against the White Sox, 3 against the Red Sox, 3 against the Reds, 3 against the Blue Jays, 3 against the Phillies, 3 against the Nationals, 4 against the Phillies, and then they play the Braves for the second to last series in the season. And for the Braves, they play 1 against the Twins, going for the sweep, 4 against the Phillies, 3 against the Rockies, 3 against the Blue Jays, 1 against the Reds, 2 against the Nationals, 3 against the Reds, 3 against the Marlins, and then the Mets. So looking at it, the Braves definitely have an easier schedule, as they play the Rockies, who are one of the worst teams in baseball, Toronto, who's over 10 games below 500, the Reds, who are over 10 games below 500, the Nationals, who are one of the worst, who are about 10 games below 500, obviously the Reds again, and then the Marlins, who are one of the worst teams in baseball. And looking at the Mets into a deep dive, 2 against the Diamondbacks, one of the hottest teams in baseball, easily. 3 against the White Sox, who have 4 wins this month. You have to come out of there with a sweep. 3 against the Red Sox, they've cooled off. They're cooling off 4 of their last 6, I believe. And now they're 4 games out of the 3rd in that American League wildcard spot. 3 against the Reds, who I talked about before, about 10 games below 500. 3 against the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays are obviously over 10 games below 500. Phillies, top of the NL East. Nationals, below 500, not that good, out of the wild card race about now. And then Phillies, who are, like I said before, top of the NL East, and then they play the Braves. But for the Mets to be comfortable heading into a big series against the Phillies, they have to go 13-4 from the White Sox series to the Blue Jays series, which means they would, if they don't sweep the White Sox, it would be probably one of the worst series for the Mets. So you have to get a sweep against one of the worst teams in baseball history. So you have to get the sweep there. Red Sox, Reds, Blue Jays. That's all going and winning each of those series and only giving up one. At that point, one of those things you have to sweep. Most likely, you'll sweep the Blue Jays to maybe go 12-2 down that stretch, but 11-3 down that stretch is what it has to be. You cannot afford to lose to a series against the Reds or the Blue Jays or the Red Sox. That cannot happen, especially what the Braves have coming up for them and especially how hot they are. So right now it's shaping up to be the Braves and the Mets in a 3-game series as the second to last series in the season is going to probably be the biggest series for the Mets within the past 2 seasons. And the Mets have to pick it up now as they're 2.5 games back to stay in this race and make it a huge series for them. But that's going to do it for this week of the Ets Media podcast. We have less than 2 weeks until the Jets' first game. But before then, I will see you next Wednesday. Go Mets and go Jets.